Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I have a conversation with the one and only Rick Perry. Rick is the amazing master behind lots of sets of Dimension 20, whether it's the physical sets or the digital ones. Rick Perry had a hand in designing them. In this interview, I took the questions from Reddit, but from now on, I'm going to accept questions from my channel's community tab, which, thanks to you, is now open because now I have more than 500 subscribers. As of recording this video, I actually have 900 plus subscribers. So click that subscribe button because that helps me reach more Dimension 20 fans, more geeks like me, and also like the video because that helps it spread. So with that said, thank you so much for watching and enjoy the interview. Before we dive into fan questions, in case people who don't know you, and I'm sure there aren't many in the D20 community, but for the newcomers, could you explain a bit who you are and what you do, and even we can go back to how you started?
Sure. I'm Rick Perry. I'm the production designer and creative producer for Dimension 20, which is an actual play show from College Humor. And I work with the team to kind of design and build everything from the sets to the table, to the hand props, to the miniatures and the battle maps, and even the virtual battle maps. Yeah. So what you were talking about, how I got my start, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I come from a film and TV background, and from a fine arts angle. I got into TV and film production about 15 years ago or so, maybe a little bit more, in New York City, actually, and I gravitated towards the art department and kind of worked as a carpenter and a greensman and a prop maker. And I worked in I worked in Texas for a couple of years and joined the union, and I just kind of worked on a lot of different shows and things, and kind of built up a big body of experiences from different corners of the art department. And then I started doing more production design and art directing. And actually, I production designed a couple of sketches for College Humor one summer because a friend of mine from school was producing, and then she invited me to come and talk to them about this new Dungeons and Dragons show that they were thinking of making. And it was super early on. At that time, it was actually called Fantasy High. It wasn't called Dimension 20. And we didn't really know what, they were looking for a production designer, and I had, I got into D&D a long time ago, and then I had just recently gotten back in and was DMing games and things like that. So it was very fresh, and I was, excited about it, and it seemed like a good fit. So I joined with them, and yeah. And at first I drew up plans. The first version of the set was something very fantasy high, we literally were going to build an interior of a classroom, a high school classroom with that was a mashup of fantasy props and an American high school, which is kind of fun, as opposed to a Harry Potter, English boarding school. This was very much this is an American high school, and then we just, as the design evolved, I think it was Sam Rice who came up with the idea of the dome, based off of a Dimension 20 die, so, or a D20, a polyhedral die. So that the idea was just something that would be more universal, that we could use for different seasons and stuff. So anyway, yeah.
That's crazy to me that at the beginning it was called Fantasy High and not Dimension 20.
Yeah, because they were
yeah.
Oh, wow, we might want to do a different season of this, so let's call it Dimension 20 : Fantasy High. I think at one point too, they were calling it, we were trying to come up with names. I think one of the early names was Adventure Dome.
Adventure Dome.
Yeah, Adventure Zone. So let's not do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. Let's see. I have like the first question here for you. Best set piece or mini that you've done and never got into the show or wasn't visible from the cameras?
It's hard to say, it's hard to say what the best one was. Trying to think. Oh, I mean, I could think of different ones from every season, but one that pops into my head is from the finale, of course, spoilers, but from the from the finale of Tiny Heist. That was like that chase sequence, right? So there was a series of boards, like 4 boards. So the 4th board had this big bowl of Fruit Loops on it, and the idea was that could be a place for a big set piece finale where, as they get to that board and the bad guys are in hot pursuit, they can tip the bowl of cherry or Fruit Loops over, which would like drown these bad guys or whatever and make this big mess. And we had this really beautiful prop, because it's not a real bowl of Fruit Loops, it has like epoxy and stuff in there. And so we had a really beautiful one with a big spill, puddle of all these like Fruit Loops, and I really wanted to use that, but it had a great ending actually anyway, so that's just the way it goes.
Okay. What happens to those sets that you don't use? Or any sets, what happens to them after the season?
Yeah, well, when we make the sets and we move them to the studio to shoot, we build crates and things for them to protect them, because they represent a lot of time and energy and stuff put into them, and we want to make sure they're safe there. And then also after the shoot, they shoot close-ups. Michael Schaubach and the camera team will come in and shoot close-ups of them. So we need to preserve them, and keep them safe until that happens, which is usually maybe a month or more after the actual game is played. So we have crates for them, and then basically we just crate them up and put them in storage. So they're all in College Humor storage, basically.
Nice. Do you have like a set piece that you kept at home, like for like something that you created that you like?
No, I mean, it's I want the show to have it all, because that they might need it is kind of the idea, and they it's their material and stuff like that. So I'm not really keeping stuff from it, but a fair amount of like odds and ends end up here in the shop, because a lot of what we're doing is kit bashing things, right? So like cutting off the head, but the body is still there, so that goes into a bin. I mean, I have like buckets of bins of parts and things everywhere, because it's very useful, and it's just part of doing miniatures, as you keep these little greebly pieces that you could use. So
yeah. So if we've already touched about your workshop, let's talk about it. It looks amazing, like from my point of view.
Thank you.
How does that work? Like, is your like the behind you is like a table that you're creating stuff on?
Yeah, that's just like a little workstation. There's a few different spots in here, but this is kind of the main painting workstation. So we have all this Vallejo paint, which is the brand we usually use.
So
and
cool.
Yeah, it's painting miniatures is interesting as opposed to like conventional like painting a painting, or because they're so small, and the paint dries so fast when you're using these tiny amounts of it, that you're really not mixing the color yourself like you would in like fine art. You're using like existing colors, because you just kind of need the color to already be correct. And they're really good for thinning out, and they have a high pigment density. So but yeah, that's and you have like those are paints for painting with a brush, and then these are more paints for painting brush, and then these are like airbrush paint, so putting in an airbrush and spraying them, and have like a this is like a ventilation booth for like so that the fumes go out, when you use it. But, miniatures is a lot of like it's just a lot like any craft or whatever. It's just a lot of like tricks and things that you learn over time, so yeah, so this is just like a collection of
Yeah, all of it is like mind-blowing. Like I mean, I can tell you, like, my dad used to be a technician for buses, and he had like a bus that was actually like the thing that goes behind buses, and like has lots of these machinery and all that you can go and fix a broken bus like on the way. So he always had like lots of work tools and lots of drawers inside the thing. It's like a renovated bus, which just not no longer includes like seats, just like a workshop, like a driving workshop.
That sounds,
Yeah.
that sounds spectacular. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that he had a lot of like special tools and things for working on buses that may be different than cars or other things or whatever. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so this is like the burning question here. Everyone wants to know the answer to this one. Is there any chance we could see the return of 3D printed sets and character minis?
Yeah, I mean, it's not up to me. I do what they ask me to do, but I would love to do more miniatures, and there's definitely more Dimension 20 coming. So we'll see. Hopefully so. It's really fun. I really enjoy both. Tailspire is a whole other animal, and it's been really fun to learn. And the folks that we get to work with are really, really talented and awesome. And it's kind of incredible what we can do. And just from our computers, like this season, we on Starstruck, we worked with people around the world. I mean, we had people in, like, I think someone was in Australia and Canada, and a couple people in the UK. There's multiple people in Canada actually, and it's just amazing that you can build this thing together, a set, but you're just doing it over your computer from your home or whatever. It's pretty cool. But I love doing the miniature stuff, and looking forward to doing more.
If we already touched about Tailspire, how is like the transition from working on physical sets for a few seasons and then like transitioning into tools like Tailspire, Roll20, like from the physical to the digital?
Well, it's definitely a lot different,
Yeah.
But I mean, production design, working on film and TV, like every show is kind of totally different, every movie or short or show or whatever. And so they always require you to kind of like adapt. And maybe the show is set on about a guy that fixes buses, and so now, like, if I'm going to build a realistic world about that, I have to learn a lot about repairing buses, and I have to go and take pictures and understand how that works. And so that's kind of like one of the skill sets that you have as a production designer, is kind of adapting to new environments and challenges and stuff. So that's part of what's fun about it. But yeah, a lot different. We learned a lot from the 7, and one of the big things was finding the people that were the right people to work with, like Brother Hanan, and then developing a working language and a procedure. So in other words, like, if I'm working with Brennan and Orion to figure out battle concepts and looks and things like that, and now I know what I want to do, but how do I get it into Tailspire? Because I'm not as, by any means, as talented of a builder in Tailspire as Brother Hanan or some of the other folks that we worked with. So I need their help to realize this vision, but it's also like, how do you communicate that to the folks that are going to build it? and I tried all kinds of different things. Like there's a tool called SketchUp. It's a piece of software that you can kind of build these quick 3D spaces. I built stuff in SketchUp, and then I would send the models to folks, or I did stuff like sculpting, like the first battle in the 7, which is that chase along the like mountain spires. So I like made those out of clay first, like I made like a mock-up, and then I took pictures from different angles and moved the camera around it, and sent all that stuff to, with like little the walkways were like popsicle sticks and things like that, just to try to like work it out, visually and communicate that. So yeah, it's been fun and interesting, and I've definitely learned a lot about working with like 3D artists and the workflow and everything.
I'm very curious, like, to know, like, how much do you know about the battles, like, before a given campaign is beginning to work? Like for example, in the 7, every time there was a Tailspire map, it was already built. Mm-hmm. It's like, and the players played in it, as opposed to like Shabak doing things after the campaign had already finished. So how does that work? Can you like give me
well, I mean, it's actually pretty similar between Tailspire and the non-Tailspire seasons, in the sense that we fully come up with the battles beforehand and the concepts, and we try to keep things kind of modular in a certain ways to give Brennan and the cast freedom, because he does sort of steer them towards that in a very artful way. But it's also, the more improvised it can be, the better it is going to be. So trying to think of battles in a way like, okay, these could be the bad guys, or these could be the bad guys, or like leaving elements loose that can settle in a moment, when something happens in the improvisation, or as we get closer. Sometimes we'll get battles, because oftentimes we're finishing battles once the season starts, depending on the shooting schedule. And so we can revisit, like we're moving this battle concept down the pipeline, and we've got these things built, and we've got these miniatures, but there's a few elements that we haven't pinned down yet. And so we can talk about them again now that the game has already been played, and be like, oh, this should actually be this, or let's change this to. So we try to continually feedback and adapt and make the best, coolest set we can, essentially. With Tailspire, it works the same way as the miniature sets, except instead of going back to the studio and setting them up and shooting close-ups, Shabak has like a really fancy computer in his house that he moves through the sets and shoots, for months afterwards, shoots close-ups and things of the miniatures. So,
oh, that's so cool.
In Tailspire, he shoots the Tailspire miniatures. Yeah,
that's awesome. Like, you can go back and like record stuff in the map afterwards. So it basically like the same way you do it like in the physical sets, but like for the digital ones.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Like, how much, maybe this is like a very simplistic question, but how much work goes into creating a battle set like the ship in the 7, like the big airship?
Yeah, well, it really varies from set to set. Some are definitely more simple than others. Oftentimes ones that have like a gimmick in them, where maybe something's changing, like the ship is sinking in the crown of candy and into the yogurt or whatever, like things like that, where there's or like the chase sequence, like we mentioned in Tiny Heist, that had it's actually like 4 sets, so there's that aspect of it, is like, what's the kind of trick of it, and sometimes those things are really fiddly to figure out. Like there's a technical aspect to them. I'm thinking of the final battle in Escape from the Blood Keep, where the floor was disappearing, right? And so that ahead of time had to be figured out, right? And I had to think like, okay, there's going to be the floor is going to disappear over 4 rounds. It's going to start all there. And by the end, there needs to still be these few pieces. And so then I need to figure out what are steps 2 and 3, which pieces to remove, but they still have to be able to actually jump, across, so, and you, I need to cut the shapes out in such a way that a player looking at the board can't predict which pieces are going to go out next, because then it would be like they would have a kind of be cheating, so those are all things that kind of you have to try to predict. It's sort of, you're kind of like building a game, and because people are going to play it, and they're really great players and that kind of thing. So that battleship, so the first there's a lot of discussion back and forth, like, okay, what is this battle, what is it? We had a few different ideas. There was like this idea of like a ballroom, like we knew we wanted to do like a masquerade type of thing. And then we also had these other ideas. We're like, oh, what about a big ship or something? That was a separate thing. At some point, those ideas merged, and we're like, okay, this is cool. And then there's always a technical feedback. So once we started designing and building the ship, being like, oh, actually, this doesn't really work if we, this idea we had is not really working out, but we could do this other thing. So it's kind of this like back and forth a little bit, and then, and then it's built, and then there's like a little bit of polishing and stuff. So I'm not sure. I think I feel like all in probably like a week and a half of work between myself and a couple other people to between like figuring it out and researching it and coming up with a look to the final execution.
Are the players creating their own characters, or are you also creating their avatars in Telspire?
Well, they're all from Hero Forge, and that's
okay,
for a long time. So it's still a Hero Forge mini, or most of them. Sometimes we customize the Hero Forge minis, or sometimes we do like a fully non-Hero Forge one if we can't get it through their stuff. But Hero Forge keeps getting better and better. But usually what happens is the players and Brennan will meet. Usually they meet twice, but they meet once to be like, okay, this is what we think. And before this, Brennan will poll people and be like, we're thinking about maybe doing a season about this, or maybe a season about this. Do y'all have any preferences? Like maybe he hits them up privately, and then he's like, okay, it sounds like we're gonna do a space season or whatever. And then they'll have like a kind of like a character creation session where they all get together around like a big table and just kind of jam and come up with ideas. They sort of, sometimes they bring ideas, sometimes they bring multiple ideas, or sometimes they don't have an idea. They kind of go around and just sort of pitch their ideas. And then sometimes they start to see synergy, like, oh, my character could be your character's sister or whatever. They start to kind of like when they pitch an idea, it's like the rest of the cast will give feedback like, oh, that's a good one, you should do it, like you should definitely be the king or whatever, and then from walking away from that, usually like maybe half, two to three of the characters are pretty solid, and the others are like, well, I'm going to think on it more. And then sometimes they have another session, or Brennan just follows up and fleshes them out, and then we get descriptions from them, like, give us a description of what your character looks like, colors, themes, reference, whatever you want to send. And then oftentimes Brennan will kind of, in an inspired way, kind of take a pass on them in Hero Forge. Like he'll just be like, what about this? And send it to them. Sometimes they get feedback. I think often the final one gets sent to them. And then I will put color on them or tweak them a little bit, and kind of think about them as a whole, and think, kind of put a little bit of production design on them. Yeah, so that's kind of the way that they get made.
That's so, like, it's so complex. I like it. So
very verbose answers, but it's the way that it happens. By doing that kind of stuff, I think is, you know, we get to something cool, you know. It takes a lot of kind of back and forth and stuff.
Now, I have a question here. Someone asked if there was a moment in a campaign, like as you watching the game, that you thought in any campaign of Dimension 20, that you thought like, ooh, if I had built that set differently, this campaign would have gone differently.
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, I think that oftentimes when I'm thinking about how a battle should play out, I mean, I'm in my mind, I'm thinking about, and Brennan too, you know, it's like, okay, is this a battle where they're gonna get whipped? You know, is this a battle where they're gonna really dominate? You know, they all kind of have concepts like, are they protecting someone here? Are they trying to like break into a place? Are they trying to defend a place? You know, so there's things like that that you kind of, that are kind of concepts for the battle. And so I think about those, and I think about like what I think will happen, you know, based on what I know about the characters and their abilities and things like that. You know, how far can someone jump, or how far can a monk go at full speed, or whatever. But that being said, like, I would say fully like 60% of the time the battles go in a direction that I never fully, you know, a lot of times things happen that I kind of predict in my head, but a lot of times things that I couldn't predict. And it's actually something we try to build in, as we build in like other things that are like, that give the players ideas, hopefully, you know, like, oh, you could do this, or if you see that, oh, that's a switch, maybe that does something, or, you know, you try to like provide opportunities for them to build off of. Yeah, I don't know. I think they kind of always go in a direction that I didn't intend, and mostly. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say if there was a thing that I could, you know, maybe I don't have that much power.
Okay. On the same vein, like on the same type of question, like, were there any sets that you have like put inside some kind of Easter egg?
Yeah, there's definitely Easter eggs. You know, I know in the past when we were building a lot of sets, they've actually are, I think it was Sabrina and Shane would often try to put in an egg of some kind into the season, like the little goblin blimp from Escape from the Bloodkeep was actually an egg shape underneath there, you know, that we put stuff on. And we did a lot of like infantile humor in Fantasy High. Like there was some bushes that are like a penis and balls, and you know, I don't know, just some, because there's a lot of fun minis and things, and we have fun when we're making the stuff. And you know, sometimes we are like, oh, this is a perfect little silly little thing, or like a little squirrel here that's like, you know, doing something, or that, you know, they may or may not ever get seen, but if they do, you know, it's going to be fun. And but you know, really, we don't want to get in the way of the battle, you know, either. So it's kind of like a fine line. You know, there's we put this vulture in the Fantasy High Mithril Factory battle that you know, it was a buzzard. It came with a kit. I thought it was a really neat buzzard. I was like, oh, let's put a buzzard there. And you know, earlier when we were, because we make the sets and we have a few extra elements, and I'm like, okay, Brennan, we have these things, you know, do you want to put this in there? Where do you think this should go? You know, even up to the last minute. And oftentimes he'll be like, he'll take stuff off, you know, like, no, not that, we don't need that. It happens less now because I think I've sort of figured it out. But in that battle, there was also a dead cow. The Mithril Factory, there was this dead cow that came with this model kit. We painted it up. It was just a cow laying on its side, you know, fully dead. And I was like, oh, this seems like a kind of thing that might be at a abandoned factory. It just seems kind of grim and like a junkyard or something. And he pulled it off. Rightly so. And but the buzzard, I don't think he noticed. And so it made it in, and then it happened. There's times where I'm like, shouldn't have put that in there or whatever, but you know.
I mean, that's what I love about everything Dimension 20. It shines through that everyone involved with this loves to do what they do. So it's like, I love it.
Well, I really appreciate that. There's definitely a lot of love involved for sure.
Okay. What recommendations do you have for making interesting terrain for someone coming at it from an amateur level?
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome. I mean, you should do it. Making training is really fun. I think a couple of things. If you're starting out and it's like your first time, and so I would say, like, don't get too specific. Don't build like a really specific castle that's like the such and such necromancer that is really specific. Try to build a little bit ambiguous so you can get at least more than one use out of it. Build things that I would say build things that, if you can, try to build things that you're going to use in whatever campaign you're doing, so that at the very least you use it at least once. You know what I mean? Another thing I think is when you're building terrain, especially that's got some altitude change to it, think about how the minis are going to sit on there. Like, think about where the minis are going to stand on their base. I mean, I usually keep minis around just to like put on things or put up to next to them, thinking about scale, like how big a door should be or whatever. So try to imagine it actually being used and build with that in mind. Yeah.
Okay, that's great advice. What was the most challenging set to design or build? How much of this, in the same question, how much of the setting is determined by Brennan or other DMs, and how much is the production team?
Of the setting or of the sets?
Of the sets.
The sets. Okay. Well, I think always the hardest things to build are the DM screens, just because they're so involved. At least the ones we've done in the past. There's just so much detail. It's such a big thing. Probably the Crown of Candy one was pretty intense, but I think actually that one had, like, we tried to represent all the different factions, so there was like the meat people and the grain people and the vegetable people and the fruit people and the cheese dairy people and the Candia, down to like little buildings and little teeny ships and things like that, which is kind of insane, but it was really fun, and it worked out. But actually the Unsleeping City DM screen is probably the most nuts, because it had an actual like subway station with a train that would go around it, and that bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge that's in front of Brennan, is like a completely custom made thing, and all the like Manhattan little buildings were all custom made and have lights in them, and it was a lot of details, and it has a very kind of unforgiving form factor. Like, it really has to. It's a very small, tight space, and it has to kind of look good. It's tricky, but
okay.
And what was the other part of that question? Oh, the production.
Yeah. How much of the set is determined by production or DMs?
Well, I mean, it's some of both. When we come to, we kind of now we use a spreadsheet. We're doing it virtually, but we used to use like a big giant whiteboard. They kind of grid it out and be like, okay, we know there's 8 battles in this season, and usually like Brennan will come with a few battles already crystallized in his mind, which might be things that even helped him think of like the campaign setting. Like maybe there's just like a really early visual thing, and I'll have some ideas, and then we'll throw those on the board and try to put them in a right order, and sometimes then we'll just have a bunch of concepts like, like, oh, it'd be cool if there was a battle that did this or that used robots or whatever. And it's not a full idea. So that's just like, there's like a bin of like pieces, and you can sort of try to like plug them together. And and sometimes it's like, oh, wow, look at this thing I just found. Look at these family of orcs or whatever it is, this thing that I just found, like we should have to use these. And everybody's like, yes. Sometimes it could be an element, a scenery element or something that drives the concept for a battle, or it could be and sometimes the battle ideas don't work out. Like we kind of go down the road a little bit, and it's like, oh, that's kind of the same thing that's happening in this other battle. It's kind of a repeated thing. We don't really want to do that, or this is going to be really costly and we'd rather make this other thing cool or whatever, so it's a lot of back and forth. But Brennan has final say, or the DM has final say. Orion is super involved as well, and always coming up with great ideas that kind of push things further. And David Kearns is usually involved, and Shawwalk, and like, so there's a lot of voices in there, that kind of help us shape things.
We touched before, like, about Starstruck Odyssey, the new season. So excited for it. How was it to return to the studio after so long? Like,
awesome.
Yeah, like,
yeah, I actually went down for the first weekend of shooting, and it was awesome. It was so good to see everyone again. I mean, it was emotional, and just to see everybody sitting back at the table. I think everyone felt that. It was just like a vibe of like, wow, we're back. It was tricky, because of all the COVID stuff and testing and mask, and you have to wear like a face shield or like goggles if you're on set with the cast. And but yeah, it was really awesome. And I think I think we made something really cool. I'm excited to see how the fans like it.
Would you like to tease something?
I have zero authorization to. I will say that I was just talking to Brennan about this. So we used a fan made what is it? It's an adaptation kind of 5e into this thing called SW 5e, which is like
Star Wars 5e,
right? And that is something I've been pitching to Brennan for like years, actually.
Oh,
I've been
awesome.
like, we could use this, and we finally did. We tried some other systems too in some test games before that, and we just kind of settled on that one. But so all the players now are fully professional Dungeons and Dragons players, fully professional role players. They know the rules, they know how to play very effectively, but that first few times you play something, there's kind of a different magic to it, that I think as you get more vetted can sometimes go away or just not be the same. And by having this new, it's really a lot of new material, and we had to adapt that further to fit the Starstruck universe. There was something about it that was kind of like playing D&D for the first time again. I think for a lot of them that was kind of a magical thing. So I think that's really cool, and I hope everyone enjoys it.
Yeah, like the little change that like, for example, using a Star Wars 5e as opposed to using the regular 5e that there are professionals like proficient and know everything about. Great. Is there a build that you believe didn't get fully explored in the episode it was featured in, or had some feature that didn't get a chance to be shown off?
There's definitely things like that happen. I'm kind of spacing on it right now, but oftentimes, like I say, because we try to build multiple ways to kind of solve a puzzle into a battle map, it's like, oh, you could turn this wheel and that will do this, or you could blow this thing up, or you could, whatever, like, and so oftentimes there's things that just kind of are directions they didn't go, and that's okay. I'm trying to think of a specific one. I'll think about it and maybe circle back. But I mean, it happens like almost every battle.
Okay. So many people are asking if you enjoy being the governor of Texas or on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah. I'm from Texas, actually. I'm like 5th generation Texan. And, I tell people I'm the less evil Rick Perry from Texas. So.
People asked about the special for Misfits and Magic. How were they able to get the shadow onto the dome in Misfits and Magic Christmas?
Yeah, well, I was not on set for that taping, but I did hear a lot about it, and I was watching remotely. Schaubuck and Kevin, the cinematographer, did a lot of lighting gags with the like snowflakes and things like that. And they set up a light back there, and they had someone in costume. I think it was one of the production assistants, maybe in costume, kind of doing that stuff back there. But they definitely spent some time figuring out ahead of time, make sure it would work.
I think that's the first time we've seen like an exploration to using the dome as part of the storytelling of a campaign. Do you think that's something future seasons will use more?
I hope so. I think it's really neat. It worked well. In Shriek Week, we used the banners behind the players, which was the first time that we had done that. And I mean, I think that's kind of what we're about, is always trying to, do something different and keep having fun doing stuff.
What's a good way to find affordable miniatures for your home game?
There's some companies that make pretty reasonably priced ones, and sometimes you can catch deals or whatever. Reaper Miniatures, they're out of Texas, is a great company for plastic miniatures. They have a huge library of miniatures. We've actually used tons of their minis on the show. They've supported the show in the past. So that's a good one. Mantic Games, Mantic, they sell a ton of really reasonably priced terrain, like little trees or tombstones or whatever, so that's a way. I mean, all the D&D minis that you can get now through WizKids are pretty reasonably priced. I think the thing to do if you're starting out is, you don't have to have every mini, like just buy a few. You don't even have to have minis. You can use like, cabochons, like little tokens or coins or whatever. But if you know that you have a battle coming up that's like, okay, next session, I'm pretty sure they're going to fight these 6 goblins, then maybe that's an opportunity to buy the 6 goblins, and you'll probably use them again at a later date, but you'll at least get to use them once. So that's the way to do it. I think also another good place is at least for finding out of print stuff at a reasonable price. Of course, there's like eBay and stuff, but there's a website called The Noble Knight. that sells a lot of like used things, and sometimes you can get good deals on there.
Well, that's a lot of resources. I'll include the links that I can find like in the description of the videos. That's really cool. We can circle back to something you said in the beginning because there's a question here for it. With all the custom printed models and minis, how much of the design process still includes good old fashioned kit bashing?
I mean, a lot. Because I mean, because the worlds that we often are depicting are non-traditional worlds, in the sense that there's probably not a miniature already existing or a kit for building something, you know, like a candy chariot or whatever, you know, like that is fully like not really available. So but in some settings, I guess the Escape from the Blood Keep, you know, that is mostly, it's a lot of Reaper miniatures actually. That is mostly you know, conventional fantasies. So that was a little bit easier, but yeah, tons of kit bashing. Part of my job, or at least when we're doing physical miniatures, is kind of brute force looking through catalogs, you know, because I build this huge list of like things that, you know, bad guys or characters or whatever that we're looking for. And just clicking through and just seeing what's available, like in Mice and Murder, you know, all these animal people. So it's like, well, what animals are available? You know, well, there's very few anthropomorphic Edwardian English miniatures. You know, I think there was like one or two maybe that were not kit bashed. The rest were all kit bashed. So then it's like, well, what animals do we want to use? What's available? What about scale? Like, you know, oh, I found all these cool dog miniatures, but their heads are they're just too small, you know, to match up with everything else, you know. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of the fun minutia of like trying to figure it all out. But lots of things are kit bashed. If I can find one off the shelf, I will use it because it saves a lot of time, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if we can, it's going to be kit bashed, and if we can't kit bash it, we might sculpt it or fully 3D design and print it. But that's kind of the least. It takes the longest and it costs the most, you know. So
okay. I do want to know, like, I remember in some of the adventuring parties for A Crown of Candy, there was mention of a mini that was supposed to be your character. Is that something that you are considering? Like, would you be open to like participate in a side quest or something like that in Dimension 20?
Well, that would be awesome. We've joked about like an all cast game, you know, like for charity or something before. I don't know if I don't know how entertaining that would actually be, but no, I did join Jawbreaker from Crown of Candy. It's kind of hard to see in the final execution of the mini, but maybe I'll share the Hero Forge model. But it was kind of like a you know, you when you're making hundreds of characters and you're looking for inspiration for faces and people and whatever, you know, it's I think it's okay once to at least look inward and be like, oh, let me just make myself, this is fun. And I mean, who wouldn't want to be the king's brother, you know? So
yep. Great, that's awesome. I would personally love to see you in a campaign. That's going to be very cool. Okay, I think we've passed all of the questions that I have for you. I do want to end on like a question that looks to the future. What are you excited about the coming season?
About Starstruck?
Yeah. Oh, you're asking it because I think you're.
Yeah, my coming seasons are different than your coming seasons. No, I mean, the whole thing is awesome. We've been wanting to do a space season for so long, and it's such a special, like, cool world. That, I don't know if you've read the comics at all, but
I didn't, but I pre-ordered it.
Okay, yeah, they are. They're that's a real, like, incredible piece of, like, culture, like sci-fi and comic culture. It's like this really amazing thing that I didn't know anything about, and it was so cool to get to learn about it, but then get to, like, interact with. It's the first time we've used, like, an existing material kind of in a certain way, and to get to fully, like, build on it and interact with this really incredible, like, already perfect thing was really an honor, and a little daunting, but awesome. And I'm excited to see what everybody thinks of it. It's always, for me, it's like coming up with the battles is really fun. Then the next part is when the cast sees the battle. It's really fun to just, when they finally get to experience the thing we spent all this time making. And then the last one is like when they actually release, and you get to see, like, the people watching it, experiencing it. So I'm looking forward to that. There's definitely some really epic moments and battles that I'm looking forward to seeing what people think.
I'm so excited. Like, it's so. I've been waiting for a main cast season for so long. Like, all of them are amazing, but the cast that started it has, like, a special place in my heart. But yeah, that's so cool.
So did you? Let me ask you a question. Did you started watching? You've been doing the interviews and stuff for a long time, right? For Dimension 20. How did you get into Dimension 20?
I started by getting to see Brennan on sketches, and from there, I think it just, like, rolled into, like, just consistently following any new stuff that comes on the YouTube channel for College Humor, and then I started watching Fantasy High. So from there, it's like it just became. I'm a total, like, fantasy nerd. So, like, read lots of novels, fantasy novels. Brandon Sanderson is my favorite author.
Cool.
So from there, it's like I was falling in love immediately. And the interviews started when I published an article on Medium about the Unsleeping City. And from there, I got, like, the PR person for College Humor reached out to me in a Twitter DM, and, like, told me, "Would you like to interview Brennan?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course, sure, yeah, let's do it."
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So the first interview ever was not, like, a video, because I only opened my YouTube channel in September 2020. But I did the first interview with Brennan in 2019. It was published in an article on my blog. So that's how I started. Well, Rick Perry, the one and only, thank you so much. It is a pleasure to talk to you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm more than happy to talk to you.
Where can people find you online if they want to reach out to you? Aside from watching your work on D20, where else can they find your stuff?
Sure. I'm at Richard H. Perry on Twitter and on Instagram, so you can check me out there.